each and every one of you present here. Thank you all for joining us today. Womenite is really honored to have Dr. Dipali Chinchole with us today. Would request Atisha to present the screen and we shall watch a short video.
सीमाएं नहीं है पर युद्ध तो है। शत्रु नहीं समक्ष पर प्रहरी तो है। दुश्मन है कि जो दिखता नहीं पर इन आंखों से छिपता नहीं। एक अलग जज्बा है इनका, समय को रोक रखा है, काल को मोड़ रखा है। भूखे प्यासे कब से जागे, मुंह से दूर मन को बांधे। न धर्म की दीवारें हैं, न समाज के ताने हैं। लक्ष्य है, बस लक्ष्य है सेवा का, और ये रिश्ते अनजाने। आंखें होती हैं नम, पर हौसले नहीं कम। इनमें से कोई थकता नहीं, महसूस कर सकते हो बस। इनकी दास्तां कोई कहता नहीं। ये देश आपकी निस्वार्थ सेवा भावना को नमन करता है।
Thank you so much for watching this video with us. So before I introduce ma'am, I would just present a bit about our organization, Womenite. We have been running from past 6 years, and we are an NGO working on 3 issues, child sexual abuse, gender equality, and menstrual hygiene, conducting workshops in various common schools, slum areas, villages across Delhi and NCR. Last year, we started with our campaign called #EndPeriodPoverty, because there were lot of people, they were distributing food meals, but there were very less people who were distributing sanitary napkins to women, to fight to better manage their periods. So we started with this campaign #EndPeriodPoverty, distributing more than 6 lakh sanitary napkins, and the drive is still ongoing. And as we all know that right now India is gasping for oxygen, so we started another campaign which was a part of a bigger campaign, #HelpIndiaBreathe, wherein Womenite is distributing oxygen concentrators on rotating basis and distributing other equipments to battle COVID-19 in a better manner. And through these open sessions, through these interviews with COVID warriors such as Dr. Dipali, we just want to spread hope and happiness amidst all the chaos and come together to sail in this tough journey in tough times together. So now moving on to Dr. Dipali. For her, I have few special lines by Harivansh Rai Bachchan. धनुष उठा प्रहार कर, तू सबसे पहला वार कर। अग्नि सी धड़क धड़क, किरण सी सजग सजग, सिंह सी दहाड़ कर, शंख सी पुकार कर। रुके न तू, झुके न तू, थके न तू, थमे न तू. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here with all of us today. Yes. So Dr. Dipali is an obstetrician and gynecologist who specializes in vitro fertilization. She has taken pioneering steps in infertility space and was responsible for the first test tube baby in Buldhana district of Maharashtra. Ma'am has done her fellowship from Asia Pacific Institute of Embryology, Singapore, and a first fellowship in infertility at RCO, London. Her doctoral fellowship covered study of reproduction, including reproductive endocrinology, ovarian biology, reproductive immunology, and genetics of fertility. She follows global best practices in the infertility domain, given the absence of a strong policy framework in our country. Dr. Dipali hails from a family of reputed doctor and has more than 18 years of hands-on experience in managing her family-owned hospital in Buldhana. She moved base to Pune to pursue her dreams of offering her in vitro fertilization expertise on a global canvas. She co-promoted Accord Mediplus Private Limited, a company which is building a regional hospital platform comprising tertiary care, multi-speciality hospitals with 1,500 beds spread across 6 hospitals in Pune, hubs supported by hospital spokes across Maharashtra. The hospital runs under Accord Hospitals brand. Under her able leadership, Accord Hospitals won the 2018 Best Multi-Speciality Hospital in PCMC Pune. She was awarded the CV Woman Entrepreneur of the Year 2018 for her outstanding work done in the healthcare industry. A compassionate individual, she strives to achieve her life goal of offering affordable world-class technology-driven healthcare services to patients across the globe. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here with us. Now I hand over to Vipul and Nikita, who will host this interview with Dr. Dipali.
Thank you, Tanya. And thank you, Dr. Dipali, for taking out precious time and joining our organization Womenite for the interview.
Now, thanks a lot. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Dipali, ma'am. Ma'am, as from a family of reputed doctors, was it a natural instinct to go for the doctor field, or you figured it out during the journey?
Actually, to be very frank, I always wanted to become a doctor. Seeing my father, as my father was a doctor, and almost I would say 15 years of my life I lived in a hospital because it was in a rural area. My father was working in a rural area. So looking at him, and second thing was I have an elder sister and a younger brother who were very confident that they don't want to become a doctor. So finally that came on my shoulders, and I just grew up that I want to become a doctor, thinking that I want to become a doctor.
Oh. Nikita, are you there?
Okay, so my question to you, ma'am, is what advice give to childbearing women to stay healthy being quarantined?
Childbearing? So you mean the pregnant women or non-pregnant women?
Pregnant.
Yeah, so pregnant women basically during the I would really like to understand the question clearly before answering. So you are saying she's quarantined, or because of the lockdown she's inside?
Because of the lockdown, ma'am.
Okay, so she's not quarantined. When we say that she's quarantined, she is COVID positive and she's being quarantined, right?
Yeah.
So during this phase, there were many patients, my pregnant patients, who definitely faced a problem during this lockdown. So they were basically, we had to advise them to strictly be at home, because they being more prone to becoming COVID positive or getting the infection very easily. So as it is difficult for them, basically psychologically as well as physically, because physically we want them moving during the pregnant state, because we say that they have to do their regular walk, regular certain exercises which they have to move out, and during this phase they couldn't do that. And psychologically, because as it is, there are certain psychological elements which come with the hormones during the pregnancy, which they have to deal with. So it became, I feel it became quite difficult for them, because there were such a lot of uncertainties also for them regarding the medical fields also. So it was psychological as well as physical for them, because many of them did contract the infection. So I want to tell them ki it's a universal thing that they have to be at home. They have to take care of themselves, and as it is, psychologically they need not be in that uncertainty phase. They shouldn't keep themselves in that uncertainty phase. For that, they have to have good thinking regarding, they have to do their regular meditation. They can do yoga at home, which is quite easy these days because there are lots of online courses going on for them. So these two things would definitely help them to tackle this psychological as well as the physical element which they would face. And definitely they have to be in connect with their doctors, so that the medical part of it is taken care of, so that they don't face that uncertainty, which hospital I should go, where I would be delivering. So they have to be open enough with their doctors and have to be very clear about what exactly would be the phase.
Okay, ma'am, that answered my next question also, where I was going to ask you about the mental advice to the childbearing women. Now moving on to next question. As we all see, the virus is mutating, right? So
Right.
how much effective is vaccination is going to be proved, as some of the there are various strain right now. So is going for vaccination a good thing, because the virus is
See,
continuously mutating.
to be very frank, I'm not an expert in that field. I'll be very clear in saying that, because I am managing the hospital, but basically I'm a gynecologist and IVF consultant. So I am not don't take this as don't quote me. But to be very frank, see, this everybody knew right from the beginning when the vaccine were prepared. Also, everybody knows that the virus is going to mutate. So this vaccination is always going to be a temporary thing, or you will have to have it yearly, on a yearly basis, because as it is, the virus would mutate, and they accordingly they have to take care of the vaccines also, production of the vaccines also. Same was the case with the swine flu, but most of the people, they don't know about the swine flu. But being in the medical fraternity, we regularly, every year we used to vaccinate our staff for the swine against the swine flu. So taking the vaccination is, we don't have any other option than taking the vaccine. That is what I would say, because taking the vaccine, as it is, whatever it is, 70%, 80%, 90%, it is going to give you certain amount of protection, and not taking it is as it is not going to give you any protection. So right now we have the choice ki we have to get vaccinated. If we get vaccinated, whatever it is, be it 20%, be it 30%, we have to get protected. So that choice we have, so we should go for it.
Okay. So ma'am, my next question is, do health and menstrual hygiene of women from unprivileged society has been affected by this pandemic?
See, I would answer this question in two parts. One is, which is not addressed in your question, because there are many studies, and I have seen many patients who are facing menstrual problems also because of the pandemic, during this pandemic phase, which has been seen on an increased rise. See, women are facing lots of problems in menstruation, maybe irregular menses, or they are having more menses or more problems during the menstrual cycle. This is particularly mostly because of the psychological part of it, because everything now boils down to the psychological issue. See, right now in the pandemic, the most important part is everybody is locked down at home, and nobody knows how to tackle this, because we were not taught how to tackle this. There never had been ever in our anybody's lifetime such type of a situation, so we were not prepared for that. So this psychological issues are definitely there, and because of which there are certain issues in the menstrual cycles of the women, and they are facing, and it is worldwide. There are lots of studies which have come up, which are showing that there is an increased rise in the menstrual problems of women during this pandemic. Now, coming back to your question, which is saying that regarding, I think there were lots of issues in the rural areas or the village areas, where as it is, the women don't have access to certain supplies which are on routine case. And I would like to congratulate you people, because I didn't know this. I just came to know that you had taken up this and you have distributed sanitary pads. So this basically definitely is a case in the rural area. Second thing which I also feel that is key, where there were many sessions happening for the awareness of the regarding the hygiene, these all have stopped because the girls, they are not going to the schools. So when they go to the schools, there are many extracurricular activities these days which are happening regarding the menstrual hygiene, which these days on online classes, they are maybe more focused towards just getting educated and their routine course, finishing of their routine course. So this also definitely has affected the underprivileged women regarding the menstrual hygienes and all these things.
Okay.
So I hope I'm clear. If you feel I need to throw light on some more, you just let me know.
Yes, ma'am, sure. Ma'am, what about the vaccination for pregnant women? And is it safe for women to take a vaccine during the periods? Because
Yeah,
this
so
is a
right
major.
now, I think the government of India has come up with a notification that definitely the pregnant women also can be vaccinated, and menstruation as it is, it doesn't have any sense not getting vaccinated during the menstrual phase.
Right.
Okay. And my question is, being the managing director of the hospital, was there some decisions you had to make during this pandemic, some tough decisions?
There were number of decisions I had to take. See, we were, to be very frank, we were running with a bed strength of, we had a bed strength of 150, but we were operationally, we were running around 75, 76 beds before the pandemic. So during the second wave, I did scale up from 75 to 150 within 15 days. So this was a humongous task which me and my team did. And the only thing which we had to do was just make a bed available for the patients, and that too with an oxygen. So there were certain very, very tough scenes which I have seen during this pandemic. So I would really like to tell two of them. One was a woman was being moving around in an ambulance for 3 days, and she didn't get a bed, and she was moving around in an ambulance, and we just took her in and we could see that she is pulseless. So that was a quite depressing event which happened. 1 hour after that, there was another man who came down, who was moving around in the ambulance for 2 days, and the ambulance driver said, I am now running out of supply of the oxygen in the ambulance, so please give me a bed for this patient. I didn't have anything to give him. So what we did was we filled up his 3 or 4 of the oxygen cylinders, and we said, with this, if you can again go out and if you can see if you get a bed. So moving patients for oxygen and for bed and dying patients because of this I never imagined in my life. I could never ever imagine in my life this situations. So when we saw this, we were like, we put a bed wherever we could. We put those on oxygens wherever we could, and we had to do this. So I never ever imagined I would put beds in my minor OT and I would put patients there. So there was nothing in our mind, but only that a patient should get a bed and he should get the oxygen, and we could save the life. So I had to take this because this was totally against my principles. Putting the patients in my minor OT, I never could imagine in my life I would do something like this. But the only advantage there was I had the oxygen ports there available, and I just had to put beds there. So we did that. So in a normal circumstances, I would never allow this or never would like to do this. But we did it. So I think these are very, I could put it in words. There are many things which I really can't put, because we couldn't sleep for I and the person who manages my oxygen, we couldn't sleep for 15 days almost, because the oxygen supply was like it could last for 1 hour, and unless and until the lorry of the oxygen which was carrying the oxygen didn't hit the hospital door, we ourselves were on oxygen. So it's like completely uncertain phase, and I will never ever forget in my life those 15-20 days of our life where we faced all these issues. And it was a phase of 15-20 days. Definitely we did the service for 2 months, but that peak phase in Pune for those 15-20 days, it was really tough.
Ma'am, we are very sorry to hear this. This must have been very terrible situation, right? So it must have been, impacted your mental stress badly. So how did you dealt with it then, ma'am?
Yeah. So the most important mental distress part of it is I have never seen, I had never ever in my life seen so much of death in the hospital. So that was something which I really couldn't deal with. And one fine day, I just broke up and I cried a lot. And that is what I did with my psychological EAP. I just couldn't do anything else. So I just went to my brother. I just cried a lot. And after that, I think I toughened up and I said, no, I have to take the control of the situation, because ask my staff, because they were continuously in that phase of putting the patient on ventilator, intubating the patient. And as it is, they knew that this patient, I can't get him back, but still they had to keep their moral up to save the patient. There were certain hard choices which we had to make. It's an 85 years old and now I have a 40-45 years old, and do I have to have a choice if I have a single ventilator where I have to use it? So we never ever thought it's these type of decisions we will have to take, but we had to. So but I think time teaches us, and it has now it has come a very long way and a very hard way, but it has taught us what we need is, in those 2 months, people what they needed was only a bed, and that too with an oxygen. So that was the single thing which everybody needed at that time. So yes, we have dealt with it, I think.
Hello, Nikita. Okay.
Hello. I'm audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Yeah.
Ma'am,
Yes.
speaking
So
of
my next
yes,
question would be that what were the challenges that doctors face while treating women in the rural area as compared to the urban healthcare system?
See, it is not only about the women, it is about everybody in the rural area, because nobody though we had the first phase, I would say the first phase was just a trailer, and the second phase was the real thing which we faced. And we unfortunately nobody took the second coming of the second wave. We just overlooked it, and we didn't prepare ourselves. Sorry,
there was a disturbance, ma'am.
so should I go on?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, I think it is not only about the women, but everybody in the rural area. They definitely faced a lot of problems because there was no preparation there. The private hospitals were not equipped, and such a huge amount of oxygen would be needed. Nobody knew it. Nobody ever knew it. And if we talk only about the women, I would say the privacy part was definitely hampered in all ways, because we couldn't give them special rooms. We at many places they had to be put in the general ward setups where males and females were together, because at that time we had to keep aside everything, and we were focusing only on saving a life. So there's definitely there were a lot of challenges that the doctor faced. But see, when it comes to saving life, I think the doctors don't ever think of anything else but to save a life.
Right, ma'am.
That is what I think they come up with, and they are taught about.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, dealing with such a huge number of patients, did you saw some positive? Did you saw some positive aura of the patient also, where the courage level of patients were too high, and it helped them recover faster? Because we have seen tales of such patients online, rolling on Instagram and other social media. So did you saw some of that?
See, I think I would go to the negative part of it. See, basically, I have seen many patients dying just because they lost the mental battle. they just lost the mental battle because there was nothing wrong physically in them, but they just felt that I won't survive out of this. So we have seen many patients losing the battle. So that was the reason where we put into psychologists, we put into dietitians, and we as well put in the physiotherapists. So these were the three paramedicals which really helped us in a lot of ways. So that, because see, doctors were overworked, the nurses were overworked, so patients, and the biggest problem in COVID was that they couldn't meet up with their relatives. They couldn't meet up with their relatives, so there was no hand they could hold on to except for the nurses or doctors or somebody else. So what we felt were key, if they talk to many people, so if many people visit them medically, so we make the dietitian visit them, we made the psychologist visit them, we made our physiotherapist visit them. So talking to these people definitely helped them. So I think psychology definitely plays a role in, not only, I would say, not only in pandemic, but in all ways. The more you are prone towards getting, I think, improving health wise, definitely helps. So psychology is what I personally believe in a lot. In the positive state of mind, I believe in a lot. In my infertility IVF practice also, I have seen patients who are more positive. They are easier to treat with. So it always has to be a holistic approach. So COVID is not at all, I would say, an exception to it. So it has to be handled holistically. The medical treatment as it is not is only which is going to help them.
Right.
Okay. So now we know. So as we know now that the pandemic has stretched for more than a year, I would like to know that what drives you or motivates you to keep working hard with the same level of energy?
I would say the patients.
That is simple.
Definitely the patients who are going healthy out of this hospitals, they are driving us all. So see, we are seeing deaths, but at the same time, we are seeing so many more patients who are becoming better and going out of the hospitals. Many of them are these days going out of the hospitals with oxygen. Many of them are going without oxygens. But definitely this drives them. For me, I am passionate about it. Seeing the smile on the patient's face just lets me forget everything else. So that is what I think drives the whole of the medical fraternity.
So you never feel like a fatigue, that has been going on since a year now?
I don't think so, because the more we are working, I think it is driving us more towards going ahead, and it has toughened us a lot. I think it has really taught the medical fraternity also a lot of stretching, because there was such a lot of scarcity of manpower with us. So people have stretched for 12 hours duties. People have stretched for 14 hours duties. The nursing, they have stretched for so many hours. They didn't go to their, they couldn't go to their houses because they had younger children at home. They had their older parents or in-laws at home. So they had to stay down in the hospital. So we made arrangements for them to stay down in the hospitals. So I think it has taught us a lot. Stretching is what it has taught us. Stretch our limits. So that is what I tell my team right now also. This has taught us that we have such a lot of stretching capacity. We are so elastic. We can do this much of work, and routinely we are tied up with doing that 8 hours job. So we are quite, I think it has toughened us a lot. It has taught us a lot. Yes, I really take it as quite a lot of teaching experience, which I think my whole of my medical curriculum of 10 years didn't teach me at all. That I have learned in this 1.5 year. So it drives me. That lesson drives me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So Tanya, now we are at the end of the questions over here.
Yes, ma'am.
You have something to ask, Vikul?
Actually, yes, ma'am, definitely.
Yeah.
As you said, you had to stretch your limits. Now, being a frontline worker, there was a whole lot of overload during the work hours, right? So how do you manage to maintain the work-life balance? What was the support from your family? What you compelled you to do your duty more aggressively, right?
There's a single line answer. When you say work is life for me.
Definitely, right.
Work is life for me. So there's no balance. So I'm passionate about my work. So work is everything to me. So I don't have to balance anything when it comes to work. And I think the people around me who are my friends and family, they know me the way I am. So I don't have to balance anything. They have accepted me the way I am.
Right. Ma'am, you come from a village. You have a hospital in village Buldhana, right? So can you tell us about the situation in Buldhana regarding the menstrual hygiene and health of women there? What is the level of awareness there?
See, to be very frank, I'll be very clear. I am not practicing in Buldhana since now almost 10 years. I'm in Pune. But I have seen the village practices very closely because I was practicing there for almost 18, 20 years. It is not, I won't say it is that bad as it's being still projected, because now there's urbanization at all levels. And I think the access of the digital world coming into picture, I think it has helped a lot. The villages also, it has helped a lot. Now, as everything is coming to digitalization and access of information for everyone, it is helping them. So I won't say it is that bad as projected. Particularly, if I have to talk about Buldana, yeah, definitely there are certain tribal areas where it is still bad. But the schooling and the education levels which are right now there, I think many things are in place right now. We have to talk about menstrual hygiene.
Yes,
Access to the supplies, as it is now, it's becoming easy these days. People know about sanitary napkins, where I would say in our younger age, we never knew about it. I would be very open in saying that I was not knowing about it when I was of 12, 13 years old. It came quite later on in our life, but these days people are aware of it with advertisements on TVs and access of TV to everyone. I think it's improved a lot. That is what I would say.
yes, ma'am. Ma'am, asking one more thing, because due to COVID, there has been a rise of hygienic factor among us Indians. Because during the first wave and second wave, our hygiene factor increased drastically as compared to before. Do you think this trend will continue to go on after the COVID pandemic ends? An honest
I
answer.
don't know in what sense you are saying, yeah, hygiene level is increased,
No, ma'am,
because
because
I don't see that happening at all.
ma'am,
I still see people spitting on the road. I still see people urinating on the road. So I am not very sure if we are really improving. Still, we are improving. Still, people are moving around without masks. Still, people are not following social distancing. So I don't know what is going to make this Indians improve. I really don't know. Let's be
ma'am,
hopeful. I think we shouldn't lose hope. So younger generations like you coming up, I think, and doing all these big things, I think definitely we have to be hopeful, and we are dependent on you all now, because we have done our part of it. Now it's your turn. So we look upon you people to make this change, because you people are the change. So you have to make this change. But I still don't see that change. I am still seeing people. I still stop my car and just shout on people who I see spitting. So I have done this n number of times during this lockdown also. So I don't see that hygienic level still improving. We need to do a lot more to do that.
yes, ma'am. Because I was, pertain to answer, just because COVID, previously sanitizer was seen as a sign of privilege. Very few people, had sanitizer, would sanitize their hands during or after lunch. But due to COVID, the sanitizer, these resources have been made available largely. So the use of sanitizers and disinfectants have been increased largely. So in that area, I was saying that hygiene factor.
Is sanitizing the hands only the way of hygiene?
Maybe a stepping stone, ma'am.
Yeah, see, you can call it a stepping stone, but I think there are many more things which mentally we have to imbibe in ourselves, because the basic, I would say, basic of concept of hygiene, that needs to percolate in the Indian community. It definitely was a main part of the Indian culture, but it's lost somewhere. So that has to come up. And I think that basically needs to start with everyone, every individual. He needs to define hygiene. The definition of hygiene itself is very, very important, which I feel is hygienic someone else doesn't feel it's hygienic, because
Yes,
he
ma'am.
doesn't feel it is not hygienic, I would say.
Yes.
He doesn't feel it is dirty. So that basic, in our Indian concept, we have to get that act of cleanliness, or what exactly is clean, what exactly is dirty, what exactly is hygiene. So we have to come to that, and we have to percolate basically in the rural or the underprivileged class, so that it will. But to be very frank, I do see people who are educated also spitting on the road. So spitting
ma'am.
on the road is my basic concept of hygiene. It has to start with that. Why the hell the government has to put fines on that? It has to come from within. I don't want, I shouldn't do this. But see, I think better late than never. So when we are putting this, and as I said, we are now dependent on you people to define this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Tanya,
So, ma'am, I also had another question that, what would be your advice about vaccination for pregnant women?
Yeah, I think pregnant women, they definitely can get vaccinated as it is, because the government of India, they have already got the notification done for that. So they should get their vaccinations done.
right. Tanya,
I was seeing certain questions in the message box which I am not able to
Yes, ma'am.
visualize. So if one of you can just put up those questions also, it will be better.
Yes, ma'am. Tanya, can you help us select the questions from the chat box?
Sure. So, ma'am, Arpit is asking that there is a lot of news about the third wave coming, and in UK, despite 60% of the people getting vaccinated, despite that they are facing the third wave, and we in India we cannot stop it, because we cannot. We can right now see that people are out there without mask, and as you already said, spitting on road, lack of hygiene practices. Nobody can stop the third wave. So how should we prepare ourselves for the new wave?
So we still, I'm not very sure about the third wave coming in, but as it is, we have to be prepared for that, and we need to think of it as a fact that it will come. So basic thing is again the same: keep maintaining the social distancing, masking yourself, maintaining the hygiene. So I don't think so there's anything new which I have to tell about it, but these are the things which we definitely need to do. That if at all if I've got infected also, I need to take care that I'm not infecting the others. So where many times I have seen that the people who are who got infected, who were home quarantined, were moving around. So this was one more thing which I just couldn't digest. They are going to the medical shops to buy their medicines. They are going out to buy their groceries. In Maharashtra, they have had to make a rule that they are going to get institutional quarantine now. So it has to come from within. And if this 1 year hasn't taught us this, I don't think so. What is going to teach us? So we need to take care of all these things. In spite of vaccination, we need to wear the mask. This is the most important thing which we need to do. Yes, US, they definitely have come with that key unit, not wear the mask. But I don't think so. In India, we can say that, because there would be many more people who won't be vaccinated. So the number of people getting vaccinated is very, very important. That will definitely reduce your incidence of getting infected.
Absolutely, ma'am. And we have another question. Is it right time to conceive through IVF during a pandemic?
See, to be very frank, I was against it for 1.5 years of it, because I didn't want to put the patients in again an added problem during this phase. But as it is now, if we have to live with it, we have to find a way out of it. So with extra precautions, with extra care, they can definitely go ahead with the treatments.
Right.
It's not exactly the right time, I would say, but they shouldn't hold on, because they don't have time. Many people, they don't have time, because in infertility, in IVF, time is very, very important, because as the woman ages, that time is, if the clock is ticking for her, the time is very, very important. She can't wait for 1 more year. And as it is, we don't know when it is going to end.
Absolutely.
We still don't know that.
Right, ma'am. Right. So Harshita is asking that what are the healthy habits that we can include in our routine in spite of busy work schedule to boost immunity?
See, there are only two things which help you. Is one is good 7 hours. I would say 6 to 7 hours of sleep is the most important thing, which would help you. Second is, which I don't know if the new generation believes in, is I definitely believe in getting up early. I am a strong follower of the 5 a.m. club. So I say that that is the basic time which really helps you developing yourself. So that is one more the best habit which you can inculcate in yourself, because now you have ample of time to work on yourself. So you can look at it as that manner in that manner, you don't have to go out working and getting tired because of that. So instead of becoming lazy, if you take this as an opportunity, I think it will definitely help. And as it is a good diet, and I don't think so these days you need a doctor to tell what exactly is healthy and what you should eat. Yeah. So that's there. A good healthy diet, a good sleep, and as it is getting up early and doing your routine, a routine exercise, yoga and meditation will definitely help.
And being a part of 5 a.m. club, like
Yeah.
you, ma'am.
Good to know that.
So Joel is asking, how can I support my friend who has PCOS, and does it increase the risk of getting COVID?
See, PCOS definitely it has nothing to going ahead with the increased risk of getting COVID. PCOD basically is an hormonal imbalance which is faced, which is increasing day by day. I am seeing a huge number of my patients having PCOD. So for PCOD, basically the most important thing is if she's obese, she needs to work on the weight, because obesity will gives rise to PCOS, and PCOS gives rise to obesity. So it is vice versa. But if you work on your obesity, it will definitely help you working on the PCOD part of it, and a regular medical treatment, whatever is needed for the same.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, ma'am. So just while I was listening to you, I was like deeply touched, and almost I had tears in my eyes when you talked about those two stories about people moving in the ambulances. And then you talked about how you broke down, and despite working for hours at those 15, 20 days, I don't know, I can't even imagine you have dealt those 15 days of hard work and of so many things. I just don't have words. And ma'am, I was just thinking that you, the doctors, the nurses, the frontline workers are just like those soldiers who are fighting on the borders, on mountain peaks, and in the deepest of oceans, in with scarce resources. And you're just the soldiers fighting this battle in the hospitals despite the infrastructure, lack of resources, no matter what, and giving your best, being by each one of us. So thank you so much, ma'am. And before we end this interview, I would just request you to again share your piece of words of wisdom with all of us. I know you shared that each one of us, we have infinite potential, and these stuff, as we say, the necessity is the mother of invention. So similarly, this tough time has made us realize that we can do so much more. And your passion, your energy, your enthusiasm, it was just flowing through, across all of us, despite
Thank you so much. I'm
so
glad I could do that.
absolutely, ma'am. You've just boosted all of our energies that we need to really work hard besides all of us during this tough time. So would you request to share one last piece of advice or your words of wisdom with us?
I really feel I really don't have any piece of advice, because I always feel that I have learned a lot from you people, from the younger generation. There are a lot many things which I have to learn from you people, because you people at this age, this stage, you people are working at such a with such social for the social cause, and with this passion. So I think I need to understand from you people, or I need to take advice from where these thoughts for you people came down. So I really don't have. I think you people are very sorted out. I think the next generation, they are quite sorted out, and they know what they want to do, or they know how the world is. So I think better than our generation, your generation is quite sorted. So I don't think so. You people just follow your heart is my advice. That is what I have done whole of my life. So just follow your heart and go ahead, and definitely you will win. So if you do it with heart, it definitely wins. You will win.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Like I'm speechless after hearing all of this, and such a heart touching interview we had with you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here, taking out time out of your busy schedule, and just generously asking, answering all the questions. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. It was nice to interact with you all. So that is what I say. I always love to be with the younger generation because I get many things to learn. So it's a selfish motive from my end also. I get many things to learn from you people. Okay.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, it was nice to see you all. Nice to chat with you all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,